This is So Long Too Long, a true-to-life recounting of a band that, despite their very best efforts, seemed destined to break into the big time if they could only overcome one hurdle, themselves. If they weren't quite four lads who shook the world, they certainly gave their postcodes a tremble. Liverpool is a city not short of coulda-beens and shoulda-beens. Artists that should or could have been world beaters, but ultimately never quite made the big time, often finding themselves derailed by a heady cocktail of drink, drugs and ego. The Lars, for instance, could have been the biggest band in the world if it wasn't for Lee Mathers's perfectionism and mammoth drug use. Mick Head could have been our very own Burt Bacharach if it wasn't for absolutely rotten luck and mammoth drug use. And Echo and the Bunnymen should have been bigger than U2 if it wasn't for tragedy and mammoth... Well, you get my point. For many such acts, it often appeared that fortune just didn't fancy them. Despite having everything, buckets of talent, a great image, a groundswell of support, their break just didn't quite happen. My name is Matty, and during my late teens and early 20s, I found myself in the yin to such bands Yang, in that I was in a band that, right up until its end, seemed destined to actually make it, despite having minimal talent, a terrible image, and zero support. We were shambolic, drunk, never rehearsed, rarely recorded, had egos the size of the Mersey Honours, and couldn't string a coherent gig together, yet somehow, fate kept granting us such opportunities as being awarded Song of the Week on Radio 1 and being interviewed on 6 Music. Now, doubtlessly, countless bands would grab such opportunities with both hands, sinking their teeth into whatever presented itself to them. Yet we blithely let it all pass us by, safe in the knowledge that something else would come along, and even if it didn't, so what? If I was being philosophical and stretching the truth to within an inch of its fibres, I'd say that as a unit, throughout those years, we were adopting a Taoist approach to our situation, choosing to do nothing, and rather than interfering, letting the universe find its own way for us. In reality, we were just dickheads. Yet somehow, and in direct contrast to the age-old, they had everything but didn't quite make it, until fate finally decided that she'd given us enough chances, our band, the Albany, genuinely nearly hit the big time, very much despite ourselves. This isn't a tale about years of hedonistic, hard living, sex, drugs and rock and roll, and it never could be, as such tales often involve at least a glimmer of glamour. Rather, this is a true-to-life recounting of 4 lads and a gang of reprobates around them, cluelessly bumbling their way through late adolescence, utterly deluded that fame was waiting for them with outstretched arms, and all they had to do was turn up. It all amounted to an ultimately fruitless endeavour, but heavens above we had a laugh. Regrets? We've a few. But from the safety of a decade or 2 later, it's safe to say that we wouldn't change a thing. And anyway, it was so long ago. Too long. So long, too long. On the night the Albany formed, there was jubilation in Liverpool. There were fireworks lighting up the night sky. Strangers, many of whom were habitually emotionally repressed men, were ecstatically embracing each other with tear-filled eyes, and across the postcodes, pubs were throwing licensing laws to the wind, extending opening hours until the dawn, all in aid of a celebration that would go down in civic history, followed by a subsequent day-long procession throughout the city later that week. Admittedly, these festivities were purely because on the 25th of May 2005, Liverpool FC had just won the Champions League in a thrilling comeback from being 3-0 down at half-time, but as far as legacies go for a band, it's not a bad start. Although I'm an Evertonian, albeit a lapsed one these days, I'd gone to watch the final with my mates in our local pub called, handily for this tale, the Albany. I was the only member of our gang above the legal drinking age, but it wasn't the type of establishment to worry itself with such fine detail. And joining me were my mates Steve Buckley, who was a matter of months off 18, as well as Liam Rowie Rowlands, Cody and Bob, who were all in the school year below us but looked much older than me and Steve. The game ended in dramatic fashion, with Liverpool winning the title on penalties, and as Jersey Dudek stretched out his arm to make the final save that clinched the game, the pub erupted with an explosion of primal screaming and beer was swiftly tossed skywards. My enduring memory of the moments that followed the final whistle is watching Rowie tear down a Liverpool flag from the wall and beat the pole of it against his head and the chair in front of him, viscerally happy, completely lost to the ecstasy, while sat in the said chair was a man easily in his 60s sobbing into his hat. As the LFC chant started, it was all getting a bit too much for me. I had to take a breather. I stepped outside the pub and wandered around the block. From every direction I could hear singing and cheering spilling out of homes and alehouses, whilst up above me fireworks, stockpiled for the occasion, were exploding in relief and abandon. I sighed and resigned to myself that I'd never be able to experience such highs given my footballing allegiances, but I did wonder what it would take for me to be able to feel such a thrill. It certainly wasn't going to be through football. Through music, perhaps? What would the equivalent be? Getting a number one? A record deal? Probably getting the call to play Glastonbury. I'd certainly be bashing flagpoles against my head if that ever came off. The only snag was, despite having written a smattering of songs that I thought were pretty good and having dicked around with a few musicians from school, I wasn't actually in a band. Ah well, I reasoned, best get back to the pub. There's sure to be a big party ahead of us. And my word was there a party. Ale was on the house, karaoke machines were wheeled out, and before long the cause of the celebrations faded away, football ceased to matter and talk turned to other things. Amidst the haze and the madness, at one point Rowie told us all that he'd not long got a guitar, and my ears pricked up. Likewise, Steve, who had a drum kit, flashed me a look. Steve and I had a bit of a mess around now and then with a few songs I'd written, and even played one gig under a moniker that is somehow even worse now than it was back then, the Jimmy Savile Experience, but as you can probably tell by that name, it had been nothing serious. However, only days before this fateful evening, Steve had mooted the idea, influenced by watching the Blues Brothers, of getting the band back together, man. Rowie's news therefore felt important. This was kismet, alignment, a mission from God. At this point, Rowie was more of a mate, someone we knew through Cody and Bob, but in an instant that changed. He was in the band. Our band. We'd just formed a band. Minor details like the band name, songs, or whether or not any of us could actually play our instruments were swept aside for another time. And instead, we partied, knowing that the world was about to change, it just didn't know it yet. Right. Shall we make a start?
Yeah, so it begins.
So it begins. Steve calling in from Abu Dhabi. Rain in Abu Dhabi today.
Yeah, first time in a while, to be honest.
That's an ominous sign. Take two. In typical Albany fashion, we'd lost take one. I knocked a cup of tea over everywhere and deleted 2 recordings. So actually, we're episode 1, take 2. But there we go. So Steve calling in from Abu Dhabi, me and Rowie in the... actually, it is a very sunny Liverpool today. So this episode, we're talking about the forming of the band, and it was really kind of ground zero for everything. And it's great that we've got the Champions League to anchor ourselves back to. We can put a date to it, that fateful day in May 2005. I mean, what football aside, like we all know what happened, but what are your take homes from that night then?
Apart from the victory, that I just started this band, but I didn't realise until like probably a couple of weeks later, because I was saying before, like speaking about like starting the band, I don't like we've got like that date, the 25th of May, to anchor us back, but I think it's only Matty who realised that he started a band, because I remember talking about it as such, but like actually practising or like being in a band didn't come to at least a week later, when it was like, do you remember that? Oh yeah. Oh, that you're serious? Okay, let's go then.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wonder any of us remembered anything from that night. I think I'd burnt it into my brain, right? Starting a band now, but I mean, it was wild, wasn't it? It was absolutely. Well, remember the Albany, for people who don't know, it's a proper side street boozer in Liverpool, a proper old-fashioned boozer. And we were really tucked away, and I don't remember why, but there was a tiny little side room with a tiny little telly you'd have in your spare bedroom, all squinting to watch the match. It was next to the girls.
Worst.
It was next to the ladies' toilets. I don't know why. We perched ourselves next to the ladies' toilets to watch the final.
One of them tellies where, like, the back of the telly is as wide as the screen.
You got a better picture on the radio.
I mean, we all, again, not to get into the footy, but we all know what happened 3-0 down at half time. And I can remember, I'm an Evertonian, but, you know, I wasn't gloating or anything, but I remember, Steve, you were absent for half time, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I was a bit upset. And so me and our friends, Cody, decided to go and see a man on Green Lane to see if he could satisfy us with some herbs. So kind of cheated me up. Yeah, kind of cheated me up a little bit when we got back. But the only thing is, so the second half happened.
Yeah.
I remember the penalties, and I remember Robbie grabbing me and like, you must watch, and like forcing me to like look at this like 7-inch screen. And then when we won, everyone was cheering, and like I remember all the craziness, like not too much, but it's like in the background because Cody put his hand on mine and went, "This could all be a dream," you know. And then that for me like just sent me head west, because then I was sitting there and I was thinking, this isn't real. So like I lost the whole glory of it, and like in the moment, because I thought I'm in a dream, I'm in bed right now. But apart from that,
yeah.
So like the whole bang conversation, I think I was there in body, but like obviously I was somewhere else. I remember checking my pulse for a while.
Oh God! Oh man! Mentally, you were on Green Lane, weren't you? Although, speaking of Green Lane, I said it in the narrative, but it was true. Obviously, as an Evertonian, I was very pleased for me mates, but it was getting a bit much, all the NFC chant. And I thought, no, I'm gonna have to take a breather out there. And I walked around the block, and then when I came back, I forgot about this. But there was it wasn't just a conga. It was like an absolute procession, wasn't it? Like. It seemed like half of Old Swan was in this one conga that started in the Albany.
I was at least 50 deep, at least. And like, once it started, then you don't want to break a conga chain, do you? Because you don't want two congas going down. So it's like, you got to commit to it. But the Connie Club, further down Derby Lane, was about 200-300 yards away. So everyone just like, little step, then kicking out, and little step to kick out with the other side. But then we just ended up in the Connie Club, and like there's people who've like put the pound down on the snooker table, just like looking up between frames, like what's happening here. And then it's just like, well, yeah, it's a conga obviously, but I don't think anyone prepared for like going into another place.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, see, I think like the conga obviously was to celebrate Liverpool, but we were all in it, and I think the only reason we were in it because there were girls in it. We thought they might talk to us.
talk to the back of the head. See that game then?
Was that you man going down the girls' toilets?
Yeah, well, that's what I think. The conga, but again, I think I was in the conga, but I didn't have a clue what was going on. To be honest, I was just
this way to Green Lane, lads.
Yeah, I just thought I was going home. I thought that's how it got. All right, we'll take it home, lads. Join the conga.
I completely forgot about it, and the fact that actually went like a conga led from one pub into another pub and then round the bar and back out of the pub.
And I wouldn't mind, they were all fuming as well. Like, it was like, you know, it was kind of like, what are you doing here? Get out.
Should have called it
out. Yeah, you should have.
Sorry.
Typical Tory behaviour, that, isn't it?
The Conservative Club in Old Swan. Jesus. Bloody hell.
Just that good snooker tables.
Yeah. So then the night, like, it was wild, wasn't it? It was absolutely wild. It's. I mean, we're casting our minds back nearly 2 decades anyway, but it was one of those nights where you look back, that was one of the maddest nights of my life. That absolutely insane. And the karaoke machine came out, didn't it? And friggin' ale was on the house. I remember that. It was.
But your name would have got written down by like one of us. To do a grapevine or something.
Oh, on the karaoke?
Yeah, reluctantly you would have got up. But yeah, like as soon as I came, the champagne bottles were dry, or probably out of date Prosecco in the Albany.
Lamborghini.
Lamborghini, yeah. Like, we started talking about, like, what's happening next, or, like, what we're being up to, whatever, but obviously, like, something was on your mind, like, with music and all that, but, yeah, it's like, you just start talking as mates again, because, like, the footy's over, so let's just talk about normal stuff, let's just crack on then. And it was a decent night in the end. Yeah, it was decent.
Do you remember? Because I can remember the moment where you said you got to get. I'm sure Steve can't.
I was still in the conga.
A conga of one. But do you remember the moment, like that conversation? Because I can. We weren't in the side room by this point. We were in like the middle room with a bigger telly.
The main part.
The main part. Yeah. And I can remember where we were sat, and I can't remember how it came up, but I do remember you saying, "Oh yeah, I've got a guitar."
Well, I kind of semi-remember it, but I definitely wouldn't have been bragging because I'd literally just got a guitar a few months prior. So it wasn't like Hendrix was hiding over here or anything. But yeah, like I think Cody mentioned to use that. I had a guitar, and obviously like your ears must have picked up, but little did you know, that was like all the detail. I had a guitar.
It didn't matter. It did not matter.
Well, Cody was part of that select group of people, like the Sex Pistols gig in Manchester, where there was like 11 people there and they all formed bands. He was at the Jimmy Savile experience, wasn't he?
Oh, God. Oh, I feel, yeah. I feel we because me and Steve, we had, as I said, in the main body, we had been in a band, and I do, right, for all the any legal implications, I do want to stress, we were called the Jimmy Savile experience. This was pre-knowledge. I can't stress that enough. At that point, Jimmy Savile was just some bloke who used to be on the telly, who looked a bit of an odd bod, and I think I was listening to, because we didn't have a name. It's not like we asked to go on the poster or anything. We played a gig in a venue we'll talk about in a sec, and we didn't have a name. It was just me, you, and a bloke called Paul Barrow, and something said, "What are you called?" And I must have been listening to the Jimi Hendrix experience, and I said, "Oh, the Jimmy Savile experience," and it just fell flat, and everyone rolled their eyes. And I remember Steve just shaking his head at me. I thought, "Well, no harm done." Fast forward 20 years, there's a lot of harm done, but I can't stress we did not know he was a nonce.
Was he convicted? Just unearthed.
Oh no! Well, this is Christ.
Oh God! I just remember though. I remember we played the gig, and I remember I think there was like a couple of people in the audience crying or putting fingers in their ears or something. And our guitarist, we finished the gig. We walked out into the car park, and he was like, "I'll never play with yous again." Essentially. So like everyone was there for that. So like, Robbie saying I've got a guitar, and knowing that like no one else had joined our band that we hadn't formed yet, you were the ideal candidate. And we were great bullshitters.
Oh yeah. That's another thing. Like we talked the talk before we could even walk any sort of walk, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, to set the scene, me and Steve, we were male 18-year-olds, so instantly full of shite. Like absolutely, like full of shite, weren't we?
Oh yeah. Anytime we could, our band was the best. The Lars, you listen to the Lars. We were like religious about certain music. It had to be like,
Oh yeah.
Well, the thing that two great bullshitters need is a gullible audience, and I was a willing participant in all of that.
Because at the time, I know I said it earlier in the narrative, but like you were more Cody and Bob's mate, weren't you? Like we knew each other, but we'd never like properly.
Yeah, I think I'd only like met you like probably in the 12 months prior, but only like fleetingly.
Yeah.
But I went to school with like acquaintances like Bob and Code, and yeah, I knew of Steve before I'd seen him because like
his legend travels.
Yeah, the legend travels. Saga Steez was your name. So like, yeah,
Was it?
Well, that's what I thought it was.
I remember starting school off with Bob and cooking him an omelette, and then he was ill. He was off school the next day.
That's hardly Ferris Bueller's day out there.
Yeah. What do you want to do? Start school off? I'll come back to my mum and dad's. I'll cook you an omelette.
Who needs education, man?
Oh man, Christ almighty.
Oh.
Steve's right. We were absolutely militant before we even like got a band together. We were militant about like things like the Lars, weren't we? And we threw words around. We didn't know what the friggin' hell they meant. Like everything had to be rootsy. If you'd have asked me what does rootsy mean, Matty, I'd have given you some bullshit about how it's a vibe, not a word, mate. But we had no idea. But everything had to be rootsy, didn't it, Steve?
Oh God, yeah. Like I purposely like fell out with people that didn't like the Lars.
Or
that hadn't heard them. Like, and just be like, I don't want to know you then. Like, it was just crazy. Honestly, like, we were just like, so, I think only when you're a teenager you could ever be into a band so much.
Yeah.
Where like, we were like Jehovah's, where we were like, anyone we met, we were like, have you heard the good news? I'm giving them like a bloody CD or whatever, except really aggressively. Maybe they should take some lessons. No, and just be that aggressive and say, have you heard the good news, lad? Hear Timeless Melody. It's rootsy. It's from the Mississippi.
I don't know why you let us off, because like obviously I heard of the Lars, but like only like the hits, if you want to say, like the big uns, but used to were like another level. Like used to were like the wider circle, it's just another level, because it's like Beatles and all that, like you weren't getting into them because it was just like these like four lads just from eight and whatever, just going insane over them, and obviously like they still like get spoken about and like revered in the city itself like today, but like, I don't think as mad as yous.
Oh, it was almost, you know, you say Jehovah's, it was religious, wasn't it? With me, you and Cody would spend a Saturday afternoon, we'd go down Hairy Records and any other charity shop, seeing if we can find anything, you know, even though, oh God, you know, there's another version of Doldrum that we haven't heard, we've got to hunt it down.
Yeah.
And we'd just do that, and it's like, it's no wonder there was friggin' no girlfriends on the scene, because if you heard the Lars now, fuck off then. Yeah.
I remember when we were like 15, 16, we stayed on the bus on the 10 just to go to Heighton, thinking like at the Heighton bus stop where the McDonald's is, Lee Mavs would just be out there just like greeting us like you've made it to the promised land.
Yeah.
And all that happened is we got off the bus, got scared and went home.
That is it. Yeah. And again,
Got close to him though.
Closer. But that shows like how much it was all bullshit, in the sense that the moment the 10A went past the Sainsbury's in Old Swan, we were like, don't know where we are now, we're scared.
I'm lost.
Well, I'm lost, yeah. But on the other side, at the same time, we're talking about, we're going to take over the world. We're going to take over like 3 stops down the 10A, down Prescott Road. We're getting nosebleeds. Like.
Dropping breadcrumbs out the window so you can find your way back.
I was very aware of my bad haircut and having hair like close to me, past my shoulders maybe. I don't know.
Mine was the same.
Thought.
That's a Heighton haircut.
It is now. Oh.
It is now.
Yeah. Paddy the Baddie stole me hair.
Mine must have seen you at the Mackies.
Yeah, he must have.
Get him on this podcast, yeah. It all changed. There was one time about 20 years ago, right? I was getting me Big Mac and I saw this lad with shoulder length hair. I thought,
Getting chased by all the skinheads.
Yeah. Shouting something about Doldrum, I don't know what. Dawn finally dragged us out of the pub, and on the walk home we got straight down to discussing how to conquer the planet. We eagerly gushed about what we were going to sound like, who'd be begging to support us, and what magazines we were going to grace the cover of. I obviously saw myself as a genius. I was Brian Wilson and Lee Mavers straying through Bob's Dylan and Marley, and everyone else just needed to hear me. Oh, Rowie, mate, I've got deep songs, mate, dead deep. Of course I did. I was a genius, don't you know? Steve's heard them. Steve nodded. He hadn't, of course, but we wanted to show that we had plans, man, plans. Oh, but I've got silly songs too, mate. Melody, poppy ones. And Robbie was sure I did too. Of course he was. That's what our band does. We balance deep songs with poppy ones. That's who we are, man. And then there's this one I've got. It's called So Long Too Long, and it goes like this. And I gave the lads a warbled, beer-sodden a cappella rendition of our first instant classic. Been away so long, too long. Been away so long, too long. You've forgotten the words, you've forgotten the song. You've been away so long, too long. We whooped, we hollered, we'd cracked it.
This band lark is dead easy, like. So that was it. So even before like we'd formed the band, me and Steve, we had just an ethos about us in general. We knew we were going to be in a band, but the Jimmy Savile experience lasted one night. But we knew we were going to be in a band. But we had a. It was like we carried a manifesto about ourselves that we didn't quite understand. Like most manifestos, we didn't understand it, but we would firmly defend it. So then when Rowie says, I've got a guitar, it's like, right, well, you're rootsy now as well. You don't know it, but you're rootsy now when you're in the band.
Did you actually start on the day? It's not
oh, that was good.
That's rootsy.
I mentioned I cringe every time I say it now. So I mentioned the Jimmy Savile experience. I can't stress enough. This is pre-knowledge. Me and Steve, we played one gig in. Now this sounds mental, but my school had a pub, which is mental. It was called the CI, and it was just a scene of utter carnage, as you'd imagine. And we played the one gig, and Steve's right. We ended with a song which was. I never ever played it again, and never finished it because the outro, like the extended outro, was just feedback. I remember seeing one girl just stood there with her fingers in her ears, just shaking her head. So that's a sign of things to come. So that was the CI. Now that's actually, which I'd forgotten until Rowie reminded me off mic. That's where we went after the Albany on that night we formed, wasn't it? The walk between the Albany and the CI. That's where...
I don't really remember that. Like, I think the Tin Man and the line and that were walking with me. Because honestly, like, it's a bit hazy.
It's a fair old journey when you got like heavy legs after a few drinks. But I think you've seen that as your moment to like give us the sale pitch.
Yes.
On that journey.
Yeah. That was exactly it. That was yeah. It was like I had my preamble already. I was like, right, I've got to pick your moment, and then like,
he's vulnerable.
Yeah. There's an in. I remember.
Swear it down.
Yeah, we were on Eccleshill Road in like Stonycroft, which is the next road to where I was living, and I just remember, right, kind of, yeah. So Rowie, I know we mentioned it before, lad, but yeah, the band, Rootsy, yeah, man, yeah. And I remember singing of all songs, So Long Too Long too, and again, me and Steve, like we presented it as if. We've got a whole plan drawn up. Stick with us, Rowie. Stick with us, mate. In reality, we'd watched the Blues Brothers a few days before, and Steve wanted to form a band.
Yeah, because obviously the band that we had lasted one gig.
So if we can match that, we're winning.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. 2 gigs and you're into it.
2 gigs. Yeah, that's it.
User experience by that point, then, aren't you? I'm just lying on my hand.
Well, I just remember the band we were playing with, the band's headline and that like little show, they had actual equipment. Like at that time, I think you were playing on a 10-watt amp, and I brought me drums in bin bags, so it was like a bit.
Yeah.
So no wonder the other lad left.
It staggers me to think of it now from the perspective of a perpetually tired 36-year-old. But the very next morning, I had an A-level exam, and somehow, despite having a mere few hours sleep and a skinful of beer, I made it on time and got through it. The room was spinning, I had the Sahara inside my head, but I breezed out of the exam hall and I was practically walking on air. And why wouldn't I be? I was young, I'd just finished my A-levels, and I'd just formed the greatest band in the world. So that was it, that was our pitch. And I can't remember much about the CI because it does get a blurry after then. But then the next day, I had an A-level exam. But I mean, at that age...
That's amazing.
You made of rubber, aren't you, in those days? You bounce off.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, it was the last thing on my mind because I was just like, I've just formed a band, man. I've just formed, get in, like a proper band. Like me and Steve, we've got our next piece now. It's happening. But I don't know. Was it even on your mind the next day?
It's nice hearing you talk about it, like such like a confident sense because like I said before, like I was probably just unaware of all of this until like the next time we met. But yeah, go ahead. I was all for it. Like you must have done like a brilliant job on that walk. It must have convinced me somewhat. But yeah, I was all in. Take me armbands off. I trust you.
Because this is the days before like WhatsApp and that, where you could just like message to form a group on WhatsApp, and there you go. Like I woke up with a sense of like, what did we do last night? And then I remember my dad and my brother getting in, and they'd be in the match. And obviously then I was like, we did win it.
They're happy.
Yeah.
Not a dream.
Yeah, and then I walked down to get like the 60 bus, but then like the bus went past with the trophy on it, and I was like, fucking hell.
It wasn't a dream.
Yeah. It's a dream within a dream.
Don't. You'll set me off now. And then, yeah, that was it. Next step, world domination.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So Long Too Long is a podcast written by me, Matty Lackman-Day, also starring Liam Rowlands and Steve Buckley. For more information, search So Long Too Long podcast on all socials or email us at solongtoolongpod@gmail.com. So Long Too Long is part of the Club Shipwreck network. For more information, go to www.patreon.com/clubshipwrecked. Thanks to John Gibbons and the Anfield Rap for loan of the studio.
I like